It all started with one small act, but it would change the world forever. In the bustling streets and docks of Boston, whispers of rebellion spread quietly at first. Colonists grumbled about taxes imposed by a distant king, taxes they had never agreed to pay. Britain thought these were minor regulations, routine for a global empire, but the people of the colonies saw them as chains, reminders that their voices did not matter. Every coin, every levy, every law felt like a personal insult, and with each passing day, anger and frustration grew like a storm gathering on the horizon. Even children and shopkeepers could feel it. Ordinary people spoke in hushed tones about freedom, wondering if one day they would rise against a power that seemed untouchable. By 1773, tensions had reached a breaking point. The Boston Tea Party was not just a protest, it was a declaration. Men, disguised as Mohawk Indians, boarded British ships and tossed entire shipments of tea into the icy harbor. The cold water reflected the spark of defiance, a tiny flame that would soon ignite a continent. What seemed like a small act of rebellion carried consequences far beyond what anyone could imagine. Across the colonies, the story spread, stirring fear in loyalists and excitement among the oppressed. The empire believed it could crush dissent, but the colonies were learning that small acts could combine into something unstoppable. Interestingly, some colonists later admitted they did not expect it to escalate so quickly. The destruction of tea was meant as symbolic defiance, yet it became the spark for full-scale revolution. The British government responded with force, deploying soldiers into the streets to maintain order. Each day, their presence reminded colonists that the Crown's power was real, yet fragile. Minor confrontations escalated, fueled by frustration, fear, and the desire for justice. In 1770, a confrontation that would become known as the Boston Massacre left 5 colonists dead, their blood staining the cobblestones of the city. Crispus Attucks, a man of African and Native American descent, was among the first to fall. His death would become a symbol of courage and resistance, and news of it traveled faster than the soldiers could have imagined. Every citizen who read it felt the pulse of history quicken. The whispers of rebellion became a chorus of outrage, impossible to ignore. In the following years, the colonies became a powder keg. Committees formed in secret, meetings were held in dimly lit rooms, and revolutionary ideas circulated cautiously yet urgently. Patriots spread leaflets and pamphlets filled with fiery words, calling for unity and action. Ordinary citizens, farmers, merchants, artisans, began to rise as leaders, their courage fueled by a shared desire for freedom and dignity. Even women and young students contributed by gathering intelligence, hiding messages, and sometimes funding supplies. The British government, confident in its distance and military might, failed to perceive the storm building in front of them. Every law, every tax, every attempt to enforce control seemed to push the colonies closer to open conflict. Then, in April 1775, the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord. Ordinary men, armed only with muskets and determination, faced the might of the British Army. The countryside, usually quiet, became a stage for history in the making. No one knows who fired first, but in that moment the path to revolution became unavoidable. The first blood was spilled, and the question of independence transformed from whispered speculation into an urgent, undeniable reality. Across the colonies, people realized that petitions and peaceful protests could no longer secure their rights. The fight for freedom had begun. Leaders emerged from unexpected places. George Washington, a relatively unknown officer, began to organize the colony's fledgling forces. Plans were made, strategies devised, and soldiers rallied, not just for a battle, but for an idea: independence. Other key figures like Samuel Adams and John Hancock used their influence to unite the people, coordinating efforts from taverns, meeting halls, and even private homes. Every town, every village, every citizen felt the pull of history. Communities that had once been isolated were now united by a shared purpose, their resolve strengthened with each passing day. Every action, every confrontation, every stand taken by the colonists was a step toward a war that would engulf a continent. The colonies learned quickly that the war would not be won by muskets alone. Espionage, secret messages, and coded letters became essential tools. Women played critical roles, acting as couriers and spies, while ordinary townsfolk hid supplies and guided troops through forests and back roads. Even simple acts like warning neighbors of troop movements with lanterns could change the outcome of battles. These hidden acts of bravery, often overlooked, formed the backbone of the revolutionary effort. The British Empire, mighty and confident, had underestimated the ingenuity, resilience, and courage of these people. By the time the initial battles had ended, the world had begun to change. What started as a dispute over taxes and representation had evolved into a struggle for identity, autonomy, and the right to shape one's own destiny. Colonists who once debated quietly in taverns now took up arms, bound together by a vision of a future free from the rule of a distant king. The spark of rebellion, once barely noticeable, had grown into a roaring fire, impossible to extinguish, and yet, uncertainty remained. Could these ordinary men, farmers and merchants, truly stand against the might of the British Empire? What sacrifices would they face along the way? And what would the world look like once the smoke cleared? The story of America's first revolution is not one of sudden upheaval, but of tension accumulated over years, of small acts that together ignited a continent. From the Boston Tea Party to the first gunfire at Lexington and Concord, the journey was marked by courage, defiance, and the unknown. And though this chapter concludes, the battles, the strategies, and the rise of heroes are only beginning. The next part of the story will reveal how America would fight, survive, and ultimately transform itself forever. Don't miss the next chapter. Part 2 awaits, where the fate of a continent hangs in the balance.